Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today for this PractiTest training session. My name is Omri, and today we're going to see a full walkthrough of the PractiTest platform alongside the end-to-end flow. And actually, let me share the agenda for today. Yeah, so as I said, today we're going to see the full PractiTest overview as well as an end-to-end flow inside of the platform. I'm going to go through tips for organizing, tracking, and reporting your testing, as well as breeze through a few features that we recently added in the last few weeks and months. And obviously, I would also be happy to um, hear questions from you. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, in the Q&A section of this webinar, and I'll stop once in a while to see if I have any questions pending, and we'll address them. Before I jump into the actual session, just a quick few things. So for those of you who don't know PractiTest yet, PractiTest is a centralized hub for your entire QA process. It's a test management platform that allows you to unify all the testing data in one place and have smart insights based on this data. The platform is built out of four main models. The requirement model is where you plan and have the vision. And then we have two testing models, which is the test library and the test sets and runs models. And then we have the issues model, which is an individual tracking for issues alongside if you decide to integrate other platforms, you can also do that. And finally, we have the reporting models where you report and measure your QA. And I will go through all of that inside the platform itself in this session. We recently started releasing, or not very recently, but we are constantly releasing new AI features. This is now all fall under the umbrella of the SmartFox AI that is under PractiTest. So currently, these are the three pillars of SmartFox. It can identify test duplications. It can generate test steps based on test data, and it can provide insights into existing tests and kind of tell you the productivity of these tests. So these are the three pillars of SmartFox at the moment. We are constantly building on top of it, and that's that. Just a quick look at some of our existing customers. You can see, maybe you can see your own company name on this list, but we have customers from multiple different industries, and PractiTest is very customizable to different setups and different team sizes. In a couple of weeks' time, we have a webinar coming up. So PractiTest is a platform, a test management tool, as I already started mentioning, but we also have quite a bit of content that is being created by the company. So this is a webinar that is coming up in a couple of weeks' time. Feel free to scan the QR and sign up directly from here, or you can also sign up directly from our website. Another piece of content that we just ran a few weeks ago was the online test conference. This is a very interesting and robust online event that contained 2 days worth of sessions. So you can see all the session recordings directly by scanning this QR code, or you can navigate to the online test conf website where you can see all the recording and get information about the next events. So now that I'm all done with the intro, I'm going to move into the PractiTest platform. For those of you that are new, I'm going to try and also give an overview of each one of the models, but also provide more information for those who already know it, so you can kind of build on top of your knowledge that you have already. This is the dashboard. It's the first screen that I see when I log into my PractiTest project. As I mentioned briefly, we have four main modules here: the requirements, the test library, the test sets and runs, and the issues. And the information in the dashboard would kind of help you envision the progress that is being made in the project. The information shown here is shown in real time based on the progress that is being done in the project, and it can be customized in many different ways. You can add different tabs here, you can add different items, and you can filter them by the filters that you have in the platforms, which will be a bit clearer down the line. All of these items are also clickable. So if I want to see a segment from this dashboard, like what are all of these past tests, I can just click on that and I will be redirected to the relevant section inside the models. So I'm going to start this walkthrough from the requirements model where the process actually starts. As I already indicated, the requirements model is where you create and manage the system requirements, and where you kind of have the vision. So you can create requirements directly in PractiTest if you decide to work with it as a standalone solution, or you can also integrate PractiTest with other platforms like Jira or Azure DevOps. And if that's the case, you can then decide to sync in requirements from other platforms. So in this example, I have a user story created in Jira that I'm going to sync into PractiTest. When I click on this new requirement option, I can see the option either to create a new requirement or to import from Jira. This is because my project is integrated with Jira, but if you decide to integrate another platform, this will show up here. So when I decide to import a ticket from Jira, I can either import a ticket individually by typing in the ID of the ticket. I can do comma separated if I want to have multiple tickets, or I can import in bulk using a Jira filter. So if I want to define a scope of tickets that I want to import, I first need to create a filter in Jira, and then I will see this filter in this drop-down list. I can just select the filter, and then all the tickets inside this filter will be imported in a single action. In addition to that, I can also decide to create an automatic integration between a filter and the requirements module in a way that every new ticket that is being created in Jira under a certain filter will be synced here automatically. So there is an option to define an automatic flow of syncing tickets as well. For this demonstration, I'm just going to sync in single ticket by typing the ID of it. So the requirement now exists in PractiTest as well. You can see the name, the description, and the status here. All of these are fields that are synced directly from Jira, meaning if there is any change to one of these fields, for example, if someone changes the title of the ticket in Jira, the description, or editing the status, those changes will be reflected in PractiTest in real time. In addition to that, the attachments and comments sections are also synced. So if I add an attachments or comments here or in Jira to this individual ticket, those will show up here as well. In addition to that, I can also do a customized setup and decide to map additional fields like I have here. For example, I map the feature field and the sprint field, and those fields are mapped with Jira. So if they had values in Jira, they would pop up here immediately as well. Now that I have the requirement ticket created, to link it to actual items, to test cases, I have the traceability tab over here. So from here, I can decide to link individual tests to the requirement. And when I click on the show list, basically what I will see is my entire test library view. So all the tests that exist in the test library will show up here under this list. If I have filters in the test library, I will also see them here on the left pane, and I can use those filters to basically select a group of tests, either individually or from the top, and then I can add all the test cases to link them to the requirement. So now that the tests are linked to the requirement, you can see that I have an aggregated status for the requirement. I can see the individual list of tests here in the table and the run status of each one of those. And basically, I can see the testing status of the requirement. So if I go back to the general tab, I can see also that this information is available from here as well. Now, one more thing that is important to note is that once this linkage exists, if I refresh the ticket in Jira, I will now see this PractiTest integration section populating as well with the same information. So if I have tests that are linked to my requirement in PractiTest, this information will reflect in Jira and I can see the testing status directly from the Jira ticket. So this is how we used to link tests. This used to be the only method to link tests in PractiTest to a requirement. In recent weeks, we added another option, and this option is to add a test set linkage to a requirement. So instead of linking individual test cases to a requirement, you can now decide to use this option and link a test set directly to a requirement. So if you're building your test sets based on a requirement and you have a one-to-one relationship between those items, maybe it's an easier choice for you to link a test set directly and not link the tests and then add them to the test set. So when I select a test set from the linkage type, I can now see a list of test sets here. And exactly the same, I have all the information that I have in the test sets in runs module, the entire list of test sets that are available in the project, and I can select a filter if I want. And when I select a test set, I can just add it from here. When I add a test set, I can now see that all the tests under the test set are shown here as part of this table. And I can also see the aggregation status directly here at the top, just like I had before. So if you're not clear yet on what are tests and what are test sets, this will become clear in just a bit when I get to these sections. But I hope that this was clear for you. So moving back to the requirements model, when I go back to the list of requirements that I have in the model, you can see clearly that the testing status is available directly from this list. So what I can do, I can envision quite easily the progress that I'm making for a group of requirements or for all my requirements. For example, if I want to see a certain feature, in this case, it's not a great example, but let's say I had 4 requirements here for the login. If I go to this individual filter, I will see quickly where I am in terms of testing the login feature or login module. So this is kind of a quick way to see the progress that is being done. I'm just checking if I have any questions up to now. It doesn't seem so. So I'm going to progress into the test library option, the test library module. Okay, so as I already mentioned at the beginning, the test library is a repository of your test cases. This is where you create and manage the master versions of your tests. And then in the test sets and runs, you are basically reusing your tests again and again in different contexts and running your tests and recording the results. So the test library is where you create the tests. You can create new tests directly from here. The test page will look very similar to what you saw with the requirement. I'm actually going to show an existing one. So again, I have a name for the test, I have a description, and then I have a set of fields to allow me to kind of categorize the test, which I will elaborate in just a second. I have the comments and attachments section at the bottom. And another thing that I have here is a similar tests tab. This is related to what I said at the beginning for our AI features. Basically, when you create a new test, you will see this tab defaulted. And when you start typing the information of the test, for example, the test name and the test description, this tab will show if you already have similar tests exist in your project. So you won't create duplicates of those tests. So straight away, you can see this list updating, and you can see what uh, similar test already exists. So you can kind of cancel the creation of the test if you already have it. So just like the requirement, I also have a traceability tab here. From here, I can see the linkage to requirements as well. I can see the linkage to issues, and I can see all the test runs that were made from this individual test. And in this case, I also have a steps tab. This is where I define the steps for the test. Here I have a precondition, which will appear as the first step, and I can see the precondition information here. And then I have all the rest of the steps here. In addition, for adding new tests, I can also copy steps from another test. I can also call a test, which would basically insert the step information of another test into this test in the sequence where I want it. For example, if I have a couple of steps that I want to create before I insert step data from another test, I can create step number 1 and step number 2, and then as step number 3, I can create a call to test action and basically insert all the step data from test number 3. The main advantage of this approach is that if I have any updates to the test that I'm calling, I would not need to update the step information here and there. I would just need to update the original, and this will update automatically. So this is for call test. I can also decide to use the step generator to create new steps. So this is something I will show in just a second on a new test. But even if I already have steps here, I can use this step generator to create updates for my step information. So when I use this, this window will come up, and here I can use prompting to add additional steps, reduce the step count, or any action that I want to do on these steps that I have in this existing test. I see that I have one question related to requirements, so I'm going to pause a bit and go back to that. Is it possible to sync to a requirement like this with UTrack? Yes, we also have an integration with UTrack available, but it's not exactly aligned with what I showed. So you would be able to import a single requirement or separated by commas like I showed, but not using a filter and not with the field mapping. So some options are available and some not, but we do have an integration that is available, yes. I hope that answered the question. I'm going to go back to my test library. And actually, I want to create a new test directly from the requirement in Jira. So from Jira, I have the test that I already linked to the requirement. Actually, I made a change to that, so I'm going to refresh. But let's say this is user story that I didn't sync in yet, and I want to now import it to PractiTest and start creating tests based on this user story. So I mentioned the Smart Focus feature for generating steps or for editing existing steps. And this is a feature you can use directly from Jira. So for example, I'm going to create a new test specifically for this user story by clicking on this button over here and selecting the relevant project where I want this to be created. Okay, let me quickly make changes to that. Okay, so right now I'm going to, yeah, sorry about that. This is a new feature, so I'm not yet used to it. In any case, let me quickly do it from scratch here. Okay, so now that the linkage type is test, I will be able to use it. So going back here and refreshing the screen. And now I'm going to use this to create a new PractiTest test. So what will happen now is that if this requirement did not exist in PractiTest, it will import it as part of the process. And then at the same time, it's going to create a new test with the same name and the same description as the requirement. And based on this name and description, the steps will now be generated. So you can see these 10 steps that are generated are being generated by the AI integration, by the AI, and it's basically AI generated based on the information that I have here as part of the description and the title. Now, if I want to make changes to the output that I got, I can also use this step generator window to add additional information or to create additional prompting. So for example, add an additional step for Spanish station. So when I prompt, I can then use this to kind of regenerate the steps just like I'm doing now. It will take a few seconds to load my command. And this, by the way, is available from the requirement like I showed in Jira, but also when you create tests directly in PractiTest with a name and description, it will work exactly the same. So you can generate the steps using the SmartFox directly from the test itself as well. So here it's added as at the bottom. If I'm happy with the result, I can apply steps. I can also decide to go back to the previous version and then apply the steps here. So it's kind of allowing me flexibility in that sense. And obviously it's AI generated, so it's not the final result, and I would probably need to make some changes to the steps. But I can now, once the steps are inserted, use the step editor to kind of make changes to my steps, and once I'm happy with the result, create the new test. Okay, so now that we went through the test creation process, I want to discuss the fields and filters topic a bit more. So in PractiTest, we use a relatively unique method for organizing information, which is based on the fields and filters that are created based on those fields. So you can see here, for example, I have different fields available on the right-hand side, as well as different fields here in this section. And these fields are basically smart tags that I use to tag this relevant test or each one of the tests as well as the other items in the platform with the relevant category. Some of these fields are being created by the platform as part of the creation of the project, which we call them the system fields. And some of them are being created as part of the customization of the project administrator, which we call custom fields. So for every category that I want to add for my tests, I can create a new field. If I want to create categories for my issues, I can also create fields that would appear only in the issues section, or I can decide to have fields that appear in a few sections as well. So for example, I want to now categorize this as part of platform one, and I want to assign this to myself. And I want to keep this at status draft and then add a new feature here called SmartFox. So you can now see that this is tagged with a few different fields. Let's say this is also a sanity test. And I'm going to save my test. So back in the test library, here on the left section, I can see different filter items that I have. For example, I have an auto filter here that shows all my tests divided into the relevant corresponding features. So I have 4 tests that are related to the login feature. I have 1 test that is related to the SmartFox feature, which is the one that I just created and tagged as SmartFox. If I open up the second filter here, I will see a list of all the different statuses that are available. I remember that this test, test number 54, which is the SmartFox test that I just created, is of the draft status. So if I go into the draft filter here, I can see that the exact same test is shown under here as well. So this is the main benefit of this method, because now I don't need to duplicate it when I want to have the same test case under 2 different folders. When I use a folder system, I would need to basically have 2 different versions of the same test and drop each one of these versions in a different folder. And with this method, I can just basically create filter views, and these are, as they are called, just filters. So they would not actually contain the tests. That will just show all the tests that are being met, that are meeting the criteria of the filter. So even if I delete one of these filters, the information inside the filter would not be deleted. And these are the main benefits of this approach. To create new filters, I have this plus sign over here. And here I have a few different options. I can either create a filter by just defining a criteria for it from the middle section here. For example, I can add an end criteria. And then I can use the fields that I have that I showed earlier inside the test. For example, let's say platform, and say, show me all the tests that are part of platform number 1. Then I just need to name it from here. When I create this filter, I will now see that there is a new filter here called platform 1, and this would show all the different tests that are associated with platform 1. So this is the first option. I can create it as just a simple filter like I showed, or I can decide to create it as a more complex filter. For example, if I want to add an additional criteria for an additional field. So I can add, in addition to that, show me all the tests that are related to platform 1, but also are assigned to me. I can also make it more complex. I can show me everything that is related to platform 1 and is assigned to me or to Alex. So this can be very, very complex. I can also use dates, for example, show me everything that is created, and then I can do absolute dates, let's say from October 1st to October 10th. But I can also do dynamic dates. So show me everything that is created in the last 7 days. So we can see that this test that that I just created as part of the demonstration meets all of these criteria, and therefore it will show up under this filter. So this is the first way to create filters from here. The second option, which is very straightforward and easier, and is actually the most recommended way to create those filters, is called the auto filters. So when I have fields created as list fields, where I can define the values up front, I can use this automatic filter option to kind of just create all the different filters automatically based on the available values. So for example, if I want to do here to create a filter for the different platforms, all I need to do is just to select the platform field from this section. Now, if I want to create it as an hierarchy, I can also add additional fields for this hierarchy. For example, I want to show a breakdown of the platform, but also of the features underneath that. So I can just add an additional child autofilter. If I want to have a third level, I can do that as well. So this is for an example for a 3-level autofilter that I'm creating. Initially, this would be closed, so I would only see autofilter by platform, feature, and status. But if I open up the view, I can now see the different platforms. So it will only show platforms, it will only show information of filters where I have available information. So if I don't have any test associated with platform 2, it will just not show up here to make sure that this filter is condensed and not showing just too much information. So here I can see all the 3 tests that are part of platform 1, and then all the features, and then underneath that, all the statuses. That's probably not the greatest example as well, but this is generally how this would work. In addition to these left pane filters, I also have filters inside the grid. So when I want to quickly find something, I can quickly use those to to apply a quick filter, and then I have all the tests in this example that are of the status draft. Now, if I want to use this list to create a permanent filter, I can do that as well from here by clicking Save as Filter and then naming this filter. Just checking if we have any questions up to now. Okay, doesn't seem so. Um, so one more thing that I want to mention is that in addition to filtering on the left pane that I showed and filtering in the grid itself, you can also decide to search for things. So for example, if I want to search for SmartFox, when I start typing the phrase here, okay, space. When I start typing the phrase here, it will show all the relevant items that are matching in the phrase. As you can see, it needs to be an exact match, but it will show as part of the different sections. So first of all, it will show me the requirement that have a matching, and then it will show the test. And it also shows where it's matching. So in this case, it's matching in the title, the description, and then in the test, we have this matching in these steps as well. So this is how you create an organized test in PractiTest itself. You can also decide to import tests from Excel spreadsheets. So if you need to do that, you can go to the project settings and to the import section, import tests. And then from here, what I need to do is to basically map those columns that I have, those rows that I have here, or those fields, to columns from the Excel. So if the test name exists in column A in my spreadsheet, I would just map it here to column A. If, for example, author does not exist and I don't want to map it, I can just remove the letter altogether. I can import either from Google Sheets or from an Excel file. So now that we covered the test library section, I'm going to move to the test sets and runs section. The test sets and runs, as I mentioned, is where you actually group test cases together and run them and store the results. So I'm going to create a new test set here and call it, let's say, login. So initially my test set will be empty. To add test cases to it, I have this option over here. When I click this option, what I will see here is my test library view. Again, all the filters that I created in my test library will be available here, and I can just use those filters quickly to find the group of tests that I need for creating the test set. And select the entire content of the group, then add them in a single action. When I add test cases to a test set, I'm basically creating a new entity out of them, which we call in PractiTest the test instance. The idea here is that you can reuse your tests again and again, as I already said, and then basically every time you add them to a new test set, you create a new instance of this test in the context of the individual test set. To define context for the test set, again, you're using fields. So if I navigate to the general tab here, I see all the different fields that are available as part of my test set. These can be, some of them can be identical to what I have in the test, but most would be different and individual for my test sets and will be more focused on the execution of the tests rather than the organization of the scripts. So for example, I have the indication of which sprint this test set is being run as part of, or different milestones or different browsers, which are more parameters that are related to the execution rather than the organization of the script itself. To actually run a test instance, I just click on the run button next to it. So this run button over here. When I do that, I will be redirected to the run screen. So from here, on the left-hand side, I can see the step information as I defined in the test library. And on the right-hand side, I can define a status for each one of those steps, and I can type in the actual result. In addition to those two options, I can also decide to fail a step and report a defect directly from it, or I can link an existing defect that already exists in my project to the step. So when I use this fail an issue option over here, in this case, because I'm integrated with Jira, this window will come up where I decide where, in terms of which project in Jira I want to report this defect to, and which issue type I want to create it as. The description here will already contain the steps to reproduce based on the steps that led me to find the issue. And just below that, I have all the different fields that I decided to include as part of the defect creation process. So I can fill in the sprint, I can fill in the features, and this is generally things I can decide directly from here. Now, once I'm ready to create it, I can just create it from here. You can now see that this is a defect that is being created directly in Jira. The PractiTest integration section already also exists here. Here I can see slightly different information. I can see who was the tester that reported this and what date this was executed in and the run status of the test it was reported from. I also have a link directly to the test in the test library and to the test run from here. If I open up this view, I can see the actual step that failed. If I want to report the defect directly into PractiTest, meaning if I don't have this integration, when I use the fail an issue option, I would just be redirected directly to the issues module in PractiTest, where a new defect will be created with these details. So even now that I reported the defect into Jira, there is also a defect created in PractiTest as a copy to the original in Jira. So this is the defect that is being created. You can see the name, the description, and the status here, again, are synced to the original ticket in Jira. So any changes for these fields in Jira will reflect here in real time. Same goes for the attachments and comments. And again, you can decide to map additional fields. The idea here is that you can keep track of issues directly from PractiTest. So when there are fixes for those tickets in Jira, you will be able to keep track directly from here and retest what is needed and kind of assign back to the developers. So now that I'm done with my test run, if I go back to the test sets that I created this run from, I can see an overview of the execution that I just had, the run status, the issue that was reported from it, who was the tester, and when was the run made. Now, if I want, and also the breakdown to steps. Now, if I want to quickly filter this view to see only things that I executed, so again, I can use the same option that I showed in the previous grid to kind of quickly show only the information of a certain tester. If I want to reset this, I can do it from here. So this is for manual execution. We also have ways to integrate automation testing, and in which case you will see automation results flowing here automatically, and you can see using the same logic, the information directly here in PractiTest. If I click on the instance name, I can see the history of this instance, and I can see all the different executions of the instance in this table. So in this case, it's only one execution, but if I had another test run for this instance, I would see it as part of this table. Going back to my tests and runs module, another thing that I want to mention here is that as part of the reusability highlighting, we can also clone existing test sets. So for example, if I have a test set that I need to run the exact same test set, for example, a regression test set that I need to run each sprint, I can basically select a test set or even a group of test sets and then clone them directly from here, and then basically just assign them to my next sprint. So this would create two new test sets with the exact same tests as part of these test sets, and those test sets will belong to the sprint that I indicate from here. Again, I can then use the filters on the left-hand side to show test sets based on their categories, or in this case, on the different sprints, on different browsers, etc., etc. Now, a new feature that we recently added is the instance view. So in addition to showing a list of test sets here, you can now see a list of instances across test sets. So if I toggle this view to instance, what I will now see is all the instances that I have in this certain project. And this would allow me to also use the grid filters here at the top to filter those instances based on any of the columns that I have in the grid. So for example, if I want to show everything that is assigned to me or all the instances that are assigned to me, I can now do it by just applying the assign to field to my own name. And these are all the different tests instances that I have in this project that are assigned to me. Then I can kind of very quickly see what work I still need to do in this project. So this is in terms of the test sets and runs model. Gonna move on to the issues model. As I mentioned here, if you work with Jira or another platform for issue management and it's integrated with PractiTest, every issue that you report to the external system will be created here as a copy, and you can see it by you can see the indication with the ID field. It will have the exact same ID that the Jira defect in this case would have. But you can also decide to work with PractiTest as a standalone solution, and then every defect will be created here as part of your issues module. Now, just like with the tests, when I create new defects in PractiTest directly, I have this similar issues mechanism to identify if issues already exist in the project. And then if they do, I don't want to create duplicates. I can use the link existing issue option to link them to test runs where I found them again. Just like the other, the test and the requirement that I showed, I also have the traceability tab here. Here I can see link to the test runs where it was reported from, and see if requirements and tests are linked, I would see it here as well. And if I want to retest a certain issue, I can do it directly from here. So when I click on the retest option here, a new test run will be created for me with the same information as the test run the issue was reported from. So even if the test is updated since, this would still reflect the state of when the issue was reported. And I can see also that the defect is still linked to the same step where it was linked before. So this way I can verify that it's no longer there and it's fixed, and make this a test run. Just like in the other models, I can also use the filter views here to kind of define views for myself. For example, everything that is assigned to me, or everything that is assigned to me and is done or fixed, I can define it here quickly as a filter. So in terms of reporting, we have two main reporting models. I started the session from the dashboard. And again, this is where you can see high-level information of the progress that is being done in the project. You can create new dashboard items from here, or you can create new dashboard tabs from here. A very interesting option that we added a few months ago is the option to filter the entire tab by a certain field. So for example, if I want to apply a certain sprint on this dashboard tab, I can just basically select a certain sprint, and this entire tab will be filtered to show information only from this sprint. So this is something I can define from the dashboard settings. The second reporting model that we have is the report model. This is where you create a report extract. You can extract the information into Excel-based reports, which are the tabular reports, or you can use the detailed reports, which are PDF-based. The report section here is divided into the different models of the platform. So you can see here requirements, instance, test, issues, etc. When I create a tabular report, I can decide on which fields are being displayed in the report. You can see here, and I can just drag them to the right. Based on the selection of the fields, I can also select charts. In this case, this is not a field that can be used for charts, but generally when I select a few fields here, they will be displayed as option for the charts as well. When I create a report, I can also use a filter to narrow down the scope of the report. I can also decide to generate a report for an individual item. So for example, an individual test set or an individual test, or etc. I can also schedule a report to run on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. So if you need to report for management, for example, you can define an automatic report generation that will be sent to your management. Okay, I think this is all I wanted to cover for today. Let me check if we have any questions. Doesn't seem so. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this session was helpful. I just want to also say, oh, there is a question. How do we copy paste test sets between projects? Well, you can copy test cases, but not test sets. If you want to copy test cases between different projects, you can select the test sets that you want to copy, and then you can do clone. And then here you can select the option to clone to a different project and select the project where you want to clone it to. This will clone it to the other project. Oh, sorry, I don't think I shared this last bit. Let me quickly go through it again. So from here, if I go back to my test library, I can select the test where I want to clone and then use the clone option from here. Select the option to clone tests to a different project and then select the project where I want to clone it to. Sure thing. So thanks again for joining. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our support team, to your customer success manager, and we'd be happy to help. And have a great rest of the day.